before, after, before, after. So I've got my footage in After Effects here in a composition. Two quick things you want to do before we get started is you want to go to Edit, Templates, Render Settings here. Just make sure that Frame Default is on Best Settings. And then also just make sure that you've got the quality of the playback is at full. It might be set to auto. You don't want it to say parentheses full. You want it to actually select full, like that. Once you've checked those two things, then we're good to go. Okay, so getting started here. Here's our footage of our guy, and you can see that there's a very obvious lavalier mic, but not to worry. We can remedy this. Let's create a new null object. So we're going to go new, so layer, new, null object, and we don't have to worry about this right this second. What we need to do is, on our footage here, we need to pick a spot where the shirt is nice and unobstructed, and maybe the chin is, avoid any spot where the chin is like dipped down or anything's being obstructed in a weird way. Find like a nice clean spot, maybe like something like that. So there we go. What we're gonna do from there is we're gonna export this frame. So we're gonna go to Composition, Save Frame As, Photoshop Layer. So here we are. I'll just save it in my project files, and I'll call this reference frame. Cool. You can minimize After Effects for now. Go ahead and open up that Photoshop layer you just created. Great, here we are. What's cool now is we're gonna take advantage of the awesome generative fill tools. So let's zoom in here down to the lav. We're gonna grab the lasso tool right up here. And I've zoomed in nice and close so that we can get just right around the mic itself. You do want to be somewhat precise here. Got that outlined. You can say generative fill and just leave this blank and hit generate. If you're not familiar, it'll generate 3 previews or 3 different options. There we go. Let's go with this one. These two created like almost like an undershirt, which is not quite what we want. But this one, once you're happy and you've got a nice cleaned up frame that you've got there, you're just going to export that frame out. So you can go File, Export. Quick export as PNG is going to work just fine for what we need. And we'll call this the clean frame. Great. Jumping back into After Effects here, we can now pull in our clean frame that we just created. Go ahead and take that clean frame and put it just below your null object here. So again, yeah, I've got the clean frame as a layer above my footage. What I like to do from here is go to clean frame, and just so I can easier see what I'm doing, I like to bring the opacity down to 50. And I also like to kind of make sure I'm lined up from roughly where I pulled the frame from. And then we can make our mask. So we're going to basically create a little, cut out a little cute little mask on the clean frame layer around our problematic area. So making sure that we have the layer selected, clean frame layer, we're going to go to this little pen tool, and this will create a mask. Once we've got the pen tool selected, we can draw around the lav. Now, this is an instance where we actually do want to leave some negative space around the lav mic. we don't want to cut right next to it, and that's because we need to give it some feathering so that it all blends nicely. There. Once you've connected that last dot and have finished your mask, we can come down here to the masks and give it a little bit of a feather. Come down to mask feather. I've found that about 25 pixels works pretty good. If you're in a 1920 by 1080 sequence like I am. If you're in a 4K sequence or higher, yeah, this number can change depending on what you're at. We can leave our clean frame alone for a second. Since I've already got the mask cut, I'm going to go ahead and bring the opacity back up from 50 back to 100. We're done with the clean frame for a second, so we can hide. I'm actually going to hide this layer, and I'm going to go back to my selection tool. We want to track the lavalier on the original footage now. How we do that is we go to our tracker panel over here on the right side. If you're not seeing this tracker window, all you need to do is you need to go up to Window at the top and recheck tracker, and that'll ensure that you've got it visible here. So you've got your footage layer selected. You're going to hit track motion right here. Now that's going to bring up in your layer window, it's going to bring up the tracking point, this little box. So what that is, and if you kind of open it up by grabbing the little corners here, it's kind of easier to see what you're doing. But moving this around, by default, it will typically kind of punch in like this so that you can see exactly where you're moving your tracking point around the frame. This little X marks the spot. The little X that you see right in the middle of the tracking window is the pixel that it is going to track, or the set of pixels rather it's going to try and track. So you want that X to be right on the lav mic, and you don't want it to be in like an ambiguous area of like kind of same colored pixels. You want to be somewhere where there's different colors of and different values, like brights and darks, or differing hues, somewhere where it's a distinctive sort of point that it can track. So this would not be maybe such a good point. Maybe a little bit better would be, maybe right here. Maybe right here, because we've got kind of this. It's where two angles kind of meet, and it's where it meets the shirt. So a pretty distinctive little spot. We'll line up the X with that spot, and then you can resize these a little bit. This kind of tells After Effects what tracking data you want to use. You know, where do you want it to look in reference to pinpoint the spot you're trying to track. The small box you kind of want like, kind of mostly covering the mic, and then the bigger box you can have maybe about twice that size, something like that. There's no need to have it way out here. That'll just make everything take a little bit longer. So I'd say go about here, and that should give you more than enough to work with. Before I get really crazy nitty-gritty with where I put this, I like to take my playhead and kind of put it at the very start of the clip. And then we like this spot. So once you've got that in place and you're happy with it, you're going to come down here to the tracker window. Over here by Analyze, you see these Analyze Forward, Analyze Backward buttons. This Analyze Forward button is the one you want, the one that looks like a play button here. We're going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to do its thing. So it's automatically tracking the point we've selected, and if you are lucky enough to where your subject is not doing anything too crazy, not moving around a whole lot, this usually does a pretty great job. You see the playhead has reached now the end. And not to get too nitty-gritty on motion tracking, but what it has basically done is, under motion, has now created this little sublayer called motion trackers, and it's got your tracker 1, and it's created all these points to mark the position of your tracking point. But to make those tracking points more usable, we need to apply this to a target. So over here, back in the tracker window, we're going to say edit target. We're going to make sure that our null layer is selected here. Make sure it doesn't say clean frame or anything else you may have in here. Just make sure it's the null layer. We're going to say OK. And then we're going to hit apply. And then just make sure this says X and Y. And we're going to hit OK. Now you'll see, if we go back to our composition window here, you'll see that the null layer, the null object, is now tracked. It has now been assigned all of those tracking points, and it's moving right with the law, which is great. Now this gives us a lot of power to then apply that same motion to anything we want to. You're going to take your clean frame layer, you're going to make it visible again. So kind of find a spot where your subject's not moving a whole ton. You're going to click and actually grab clean layer, and you're going to move it to a spot where it feels aligned. So for me, I see this button that's like kind of right here. I'm going to kind of use that button as kind of a guide to kind of place where I want that. There we go. That looks pretty good. Once it's looking pretty good, you're going to go down here to your clean frame layer, and over here under the column that says parent and link, you're going to click and hold this little pick whip. Now, if you're not seeing the parent and link column here, you just need to kind of right click at a little blank spot at the top, go to columns, and reselect parent and link, and then you should have this column here. So again, clean frame, you go to the little swirly pick whip icon, you're going to click, hold, and you're going to let that little, you're going to take this little stretching line and parent it. You're going to hold, 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 drag it up to null 1, and release. Now what you'll find is null is now the parent to clean frame, meaning clean frame is going to follow null 1. So you can scrub through here, and indeed, that clean layer is now moving with the tracking points. So we play this back, it's already going to be looking pretty good here. Now, one thing I have noticed is that because we picked kind of, I noticed that the original frame that I selected to kind of create my clean frame from was right here, and there was more light under his chin right here. So this little patch of skin is brighter than in other parts of this clip. So you'll notice it kind of stands out right here when it's a little bit darker, and it's supposed to be more shadowy on his chest here, but that bright skin is kind of standing out. So I know a trick that'll help with this. So with clean frame selected, let's add a lumetri layer to that. Lumetri effect, so go to effects and we'll add a lumetri color. Now, what I want to do is just darken the skin tones just a little bit so that it's less noticeable as the brightness changes throughout this area of his neck. So I just want to target kind of the reds. Yeah, so I'm in curves. I'm going to come down here to hue versus luma curve, and we're going to create a little point in the red area because human skin is red, generally speaking. Drop a little point in red, maybe 2 little adjacent points next to it. And as I drag this down, I'm gonna be watching this zone to kind of color match it better. Maybe around there. Let's see how that's looking. Maybe we can find a nice middle ground. Maybe it looks actually a little bit dark there now. I'll kind of bring this back up a bit. Maybe somewhere in there. It'll be a little bit less noticeable. I'm also noticing that you can see the mask occluding right here, occluding this chin line. What we can do is we can go back into clean frame. This is great if you need to just adjust that a tiny bit. Go to my original mask, and we're going to click just anywhere outside on the frame. And we're going to adjust this mask, original mask, just a tiny bit. Now you want to be careful because as you pull this back, you could accidentally reveal the mic again. But my goal is to bring it just a little bit back so it's less noticeable when his chin tucks down like that. So, I will darken this skin tone here just a little bit more, maybe something like that. And let's see how it's looking. So, not perfect, but definitely an improvement from what it was before. Before, after. Before, after. Before, after. Bada bing, bada boom. Lav mic eliminated. I've found that if you have just a few moments where a finger or a hand crosses over the mic just like a little bit, you can double the original layer and create a mask around the thumb or the hand or whatever is obstructing the mic a little bit. Using that same pen tool, you can create masks without too much trouble, and it can save you in most situations. This is a little bit of a lucky situation where the collar of his shirt is not moving a whole lot, right? Which is great. If you've got somebody with clothes that are moving around and dancing around a little bit, or you've got a bunch of hair in front of the mic, that's going to be a little bit trickier. It's going to involve a little bit more masking, but still possible. So just wanted to create this tutorial as a great starting point for removing your lavalier. And so, once again, there's kind of the finished effect. And that's about it for now. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps. Take care of yourselves, and I will catch you another time.